Welcome back. It's always a good day when Glen Thiessen takes the time out of his day to come join us. And, first, welcome back, Glen. Glen Thiessen's with Transition Planning, Inc. and helps families plan ahead for the major transitions in life. And his investment advice and securities are offered through KMS Financial Services, Inc. It's good to see you again.
Great. It's good to be here. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about today is perfect for this understanding what the guiding and the plans are, because, marriage, as with financial planning, there's twists and there's turns, and you don't always know where you're going or
right.
how you're going to get there. And it's a commitment. You're doing it. You don't really get off the bus just because somebody doesn't know where they're going.
No, it's a pretty major commitment.
Yeah.
It's a huge new beginning in life. And it's really a marriage of not only people, but families and finances.
We discussed that earlier before we came on.
Yeah. So you really want to go into this there's two phases. There's the pre-marriage phase, and then there's the post-ceremony phase, right? So there's two different planning sessions that we need to go through, right? So these are the things that we want to really talk about in the pre-marriage agreement. So we want to first figure out what are the values of each person. And that really you want to be on the same page, really, when you're talking about marriage of two people who have common interests, common values. Not only just what do you like, the same, but where are you going in life, right? So who do you want to benefit and why? Let's talk about net worth, assets and liabilities. You're going to have different attitudes about money. One person might be a real spender, another one's a real saver. So that can
one person might want to spend it on shoes. And the other person might want to spend it on shots.
Yeah. That you got to be on the same page, like I say. So what you want to look at is ownership arrangements. So if you own a lot of different assets, you're going to want to evaluate, okay, when you're coming in and you're going to merge assets, do you want to keep separate property or do you want to merge it into one? So check the ownership on major things like a house, that kind of thing. Beneficiary designations. So once you're married, you're going to maybe have different priorities in terms of who you want to benefit. So you're going to want to update your beneficiary arrangements. Look at sources of income and amounts, and in terms of your financial goals and so forth. How's that going to work out? Is one person going to work and another person not? What are your plans about a family, and how is that going to be financed and that kind of thing? You've got fixed and variable expenses. Review that. Insurance coverage is really important too. If you have life insurance, you might want to update the beneficiary on that. One person may not have a job, another person has an employer benefit package. That could be really important when you're blending a marriage. So if you have two people working, but one of them has disability coverage and the other one doesn't, you're at risk. So how's your foundation looking? You got to really pay attention to that. Are there any dependents from a previous marriage, perhaps? Perhaps somebody has special needs. How's that going to impact your life, right?
So it sounds like this is part money, but it's also part just communication. And I actually heard somewhere, I couldn't tell you where, but most people do not have money conversations before they get married.
No. And that is really, really hazardous, because you really don't know what a person's like and how they're going to manage money. Is it 110, or is it 50-50? What kind of attitude do they have going into the marriage? And financial struggles can be one of the biggest sources of marriage breakdowns. And you really want to go in fully aware of how each person feels about these different things. Simple things like who's going to make the financial decisions and why and how are they going to make those financial decisions? That's a huge issue right there. How does each person feel about financial risk? One might be really risk averse and another one's okay with risk. So you got to kind of blend that a little bit when you're making financial decisions, investment decisions. How does each person feel about debt, about saving, about planning ahead? Is one a goal setter and another one live for today, right? So that could really be source of conflict. One thing that's often overlooked in a marriage situation is if you are a partner in a business or have a business relationship somewhere along the way, and now you're going to be married, do those business agreements need to be updated to protect the business from a surviving spouse situation, right? So you got to evaluate business agreements once you get married as well. So just got to be aware of how those are going to be impacted before the marriage ceremony. After the wedding ceremony, then you want
then
to...
you don't have many choices.
Well, you're pretty committed, right? This is a long-term, lifetime situation, right? So now you want to make sure that those business, the ownership arrangements are updated. So we might have talked about it prior to the marriage ceremony, but now it's time to make sure that it gets done, right? So updating the ownership arrangements, making sure that those beneficiary arrangements have been updated to the correct people, making sure that your insurance coverage is up to date. So another thing is, now that the marriage ceremony is over, you might want to update your will, your estate planning documents. Who's going to be your power of attorney now? Might be somebody different than it was before. If you even had a will,
you can finally take your mom off the person for emergency contact.
Right. So that's some of the differences between the pre and the post marriage. So it's really important. There's a series of planning issues that I work through with people. And if you take them like logically and open discussion type of thing, and you just have a checklist that you go through, you're probably going to have a lot more success in terms of knowing how each person is going to actually work these things out in their marriage.
What about something as simple as just joining bank accounts?
That's another thing. I have some clients who actually keep their finances separate from each other. And that's okay if that's what they choose to do. But if one person is going into the marriage assuming that everything's going to be together, and then another person, wow, that could be a real source of stress from the start. So, you really, that's a good thing. What do you mean you're not going to share the house? What I'm not going to be put on the title? What are you talking about? So all of these different things, if they're worked out beforehand and then followed through, because a lot of things can be agreed on, and if it never happens...
Setting the right expectations and following through, yeah.
Exactly right.
What do you see as some of the toughest points for maybe newlyweds or people who before they get married? What are some of the biggest points that they can or can't get over? It's
interesting. It depends on where they're coming from. If they've been single until they're in their 40s and they're like, they're used to their own way of doing things, it can be really difficult to merge that with the thinking of their person. Or if they've been through a marriage or two really bad situations, they're kind of taking that with them and going in maybe defensive, and so that affects the new marriage. So it's a new beginning for sure, but you don't know what happened prior. So the better you know a person, and their personality will come through. I would suggest highly that before a person actually rushes into a marriage, they really do know the other person, not only in personality, but financial and, just in so many other ways. So when people go and talk about getting to know them, I guess the hardest part would maybe even be they don't even know questions to ask. True. And that's why... do you spend money? That's exactly why it makes sense to sit down with a person like me, and it's well worth the small fee that you're going to pay to really get to know the person, because, after going through the counseling sessions that we go through, you may change your mind. And I'm not there to break up relationships, but I just want relationships to last. You want them to last, then, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. What are some of what is the strangest thing you've seen in one of these? Well, I had to get used to, it was really weird for me to get used to having spouses keep their finances separate. And actually I meet with them separately, for their plan. That's so different for me. But that's just because everything I have, I want to give to my wife. And, I've done all the preparation so that if anything happens to me, she's going to be fine, and she's not going to have to remarry, but she, I'd encourage that if it happens. But the idea is, I am, a different mindset here. So that's kind of the weirdest thing, for me.
Is it the younger people that are doing that, or is it
No,
Okay.
no. These are people who maybe their entire life they've just kind of been to themselves,
Okay.
So
Interesting.
just interesting.
Well, on that point though, a lot of times I've also heard to have separate accounts for yourself though, just for your own spending money.
Right. And sometimes it's really important to have a prenuptial agreement, and that's got to be something that's understood. Like if a person is super wealthy and then you're marrying somebody who doesn't come from a wealth background, you might want to protect those assets because, you put a lifetime into building it up, and you don't want to have somebody just come along and dazzle you and then all of a sudden divorce you and want to have, take half of your stuff. So yeah, that's all part of getting to know the person, getting to know their background, getting to know who their friends are, because, your friends will, you choose the friends and you're going to become like your friends. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Every choice you make in life does have consequences, and they're short range or long range, but the idea is that will reveal really who a person is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's probably why they become friends. It's true though. You go out and you do things together.
Sure.
We're here with Glen Thiessen, wealth advisor with Transition Planning Inc. And we're talking about this marriage planning and things that need to be considered on the financial side. Do you see a lot of people marrying into different socioeconomic classes?
Not often. They're pretty much like they're in the same realm of fringe, with the same socioeconomic status, more or less. You don't see people hanging around with people in a lot different stratosphere economically. So they're you're probably going to see them marry similar people.
Just because of the people they meet and kind of grow up with through life.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm always curious because, there's just that thought of, it's difficult. We're in America, but it is difficult for people who come from nothing to make it.
Yeah.
They're hitting grand slams in the bottom of the ninth of the World Series.
Yeah.
And
sudden wealth is really interesting.
But and if you do that, like the lotto winners, and I'm not equating this to winning the lottery if you go marry somebody who's wealthy, but
sure.
At least the finance
It kind of is.
But the reality is this is it's a way that people could suddenly have a lot of money. Yes. And that could really change a personality.
It is interesting when you see sudden wealth happen to a person, whether it's an inheritance. That's huge.
There's another one.
Oh, my goodness. That's real interesting to work through. But then, like you say, a really, you hit it big in business and, you work hard and you get somewhere and you're successful. Of course, society we live in today thinks you're a crook, when that happens. But the idea is
just bankers, man, just bankers.
Sudden wealth, though, that can be really revealing in terms of a person's true values inside, how they handle that kind of event in their life.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, Glen, thanks so much for joining us. We do have to go to break. Sure. It's good to see you again, and always, as always, very information. And you can reach out to Glen through our Facebook page and his website, and everything is right there.
www.transitionplanninginc.com.
There you go.
Don't forget the ink.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because you're going to need to sign some stuff.
That's right.
When we come back, Wes Jones is going to join us, good friend of the show with Home Helper Consultants. We're going to talk a little bit about the short sales that are still going on out there. We'll be right back after this break.